right. We are recording, man. Look, by the time you guys see this, you would have probably already seen the Morning Woodward appearance. And you probably, if you haven't already, you should have read like 2 or 3 of Mike's articles over there at Detroit News as well. Right, Mike? Right.
Yeah,
That's got to be the Morning Digest. And I hope that they've done this because look, people gonna be seeing this at like 1. But let's
yeah.
get this going, bro. First of all, shout out to Rod Beard. He's taking a little bit of a break. He just got Mike Curtis in here, and now Rod is just able to just sell the 7 C's apparently, bro.
Man, he can leave whenever he wants to. I got it from here.
I like that. I like that. Look, man, Rod, he always commends me from show one to where we are now.
Yeah.
And look, from day one, you were a true professional. But our last couple pods, man, I'm like, yo, Mike is a celebrity now. He's a celebrity.
No, not even. Not even, man. I'm
I
just a
pre-
guy trying to do his job.
Hey, listen, brother, listen. I appreciate you being here. It's always nice seeing you. I look at these press conferences, man. I look at them as kind of like family reunions now. As we're getting more and more comfortable on the beat, it was good to be able to see you and the gang and all the other beat. Amari, James, Corey, Vinny. Even Natalie Ked, the Monty one, and just others. Even Collier from ESPN. Um, it's been nice, but let's get this thing going. As
Yeah.
you guys can see, man. It is your boy Brandon Dent, aka Detroit Kool-Aid. I already talked to Mr. Ifredi on the Morning Woodward. I'm going to be doing some other content as well. But I want to get this drum roll started for Mr. Rod Beard. Yeah, he's out on vacation. So Mike Curtis of the Detroit News, Woodward Pistons beat writer. I'm grateful to have you here. Let's get this thing started, brother.
Let's do it, man.
Hey, yo! Shout out to the legend Detroit News, Rod Beard. Brother, as always, I'm thankful and grateful for what you do for this platform. But Mike, the man of the hour, the special guest, I'm grateful and glad to have you on. You were in the room for the Monty Williams press conference as well as for the Troy Weaver press conference, man. And I want to be able to get your perspective on the latter of that. The Troy Weaver press conference, the pre-draft press conference, I felt like he dropped a lot of hints, a lot of nuggets. I thought we were all trying to dig and dig and dig. He was like, man, y'all trying to be in my war room? It's like, yes, Troy, we really are, man. We're trying to figure out what's going on because I believe that this is the most pivotal offseason, the most pivotal like offseason in totality that the Pistons have had since they signed Charlie V and Ben Gordon. So, look, they got to get this stuff right, I believe, starting with this draft. But I just want to start with just getting your takeaway on, what was your overall feeling from this pre-draft press conference?
Yeah, it's funny. So, like, of course, this is my first pre-draft press conference, but what I've learned just by observing a lot of them is the fact that it's an opportunity for us as media, writers, reporters, and the fans to get a little bit of insight of what direction a team is going into heading into Thursday's draft. And while they can't answer specifics, they can leave breadcrumbs and clues as to what direction they're going into. And I think that's what Troy did yesterday. Like, he had several analogies that hinted that it could be a pretty interesting night for the Pistons. We know last season he was able to turn Jeremy Grant and a couple of other contracts into landing Jalen Duren on draft night. So you come away with 2 lottery picks in one night. That's a pretty successful draft, along with Jaden Ivey. And I wouldn't be surprised if he does the same this year. I also wouldn't be surprised if he just trades down in order to get a sleeper that not a lot of people are really talking about. So it's gonna be interesting, man. If he stands pat at number 5, you can expect any of those 6 players that everyone's talking about to go, from the Thompson twins, Cam Whitmore, Jarris Walker, Taylor Hendricks, Anthony Black. Any of those guys, I wouldn't be surprised if they're the name for the Pistons.
Man, and you know what? You said a really, really interesting name to me, and Anthony Black. He seems to be a name that a lot more teams are, or at least some rumors and fans and observers and even other media are starting to kind of get a little bit more bullish on. And I know, shout out to Ashton, the trainer, friend of the platform, and Cannon. Shout out Rank Management. I know that they actually, I believe they coached Anthony Black. One of their team members coached Anthony Black, and they had some insight on him as well. And I'm like, man, they were talking about him. They were like, look out for Anthony Black like a couple months ago. And so now it's kind of interesting to see him kind of climbing up this board and really showing that this first round, this, like you said, man, this is kind of one of those Troy Weaver as kind of like his first year here. There's a lot of solid players. Yeah, I don't know who's going to be the stars necessarily, and I believe that there are going to be some people who fall in that 13 to that 12 to 17 range, like Duren did. That could really, really, really be a gem of a pick. And I think that Troy Weaver has shown a lot of people want to kind of get on him for missing out on Halliburton. It would be so different if Hallie was the next pick after Killian, bro. But there was a lot of teams who were kind of like, just like with Duren. A lot of teams are like, we see the talent, but on the NBA level, is he going to really, really, really get there? But in this draft, I see a lot of solid guys, and I think that Troy Weaver has set himself up kind of nicely, bro. Whether it's trading back with that number 5 pick and picking up a couple picks, or with that number 31 pick, how crucial was it to secure that? So though you drop in the lottery, you're able to use that 31 potentially to get back into that first round a little bit easier than if you would probably landed with that 5th or 6th pick in the second round. I'm excited. I tweeted this yesterday when he was talking about that what was that quote that kind of sent everybody ablaze, man, about he only hits the long ball.
Yeah,
He's
he's
not
going
trying to
for the
stop it
big
in
swing.
the center. What'd you say?
Yeah, he's going for the big swing.
Yep.
I
Yep.
think it's interesting how he was very careful and very meticulous with the words that he used when he was talking about each pick. The 5th pick, the 31 pick, he wasn't saying like this player, the player. He kept saying the value at that position. I think that was very important because he's not looking at it as, hey, we're going to get this player at this pick. No, we're going to look at all the options, vet it all out, turn every stone, the phrases he likes to use, and see what we can do
Talk about it, Mike.
to
Talk about it.
position ourselves. I'm sorry, to position themselves, the Pistons, with the best opportunity to improve the team. So I think those are some of the things that I'm going into draft night looking for. As a writer, like he also said this, you walk through the park at night, you gotta be prepared for whatever's coming at you. I'm going in tomorrow's draft night prepared for anything. I'm not expecting them to just pick a number 5 and number 31. I'm expecting it to be complete chaos. And that
Complete
way I can
chaos.
be prepared to maneuver. So
Bro,
yeah, I think it'll be a fun night, man.
I'm expecting it to. And it's like I was trying to coax that. Like a lot of times, in a lot of the narratives we hear is that if the Pistons trade, a lot of people are like, oh, they're going to trade it for a proven player. Oh, why would they do that? We need young cheap talent as well. And I'm like, wait. When has Troy ever not gone into the draft and went ham? You know what I mean? Like this has kind of been his mo, and it makes me like we continue to say like very very man, look, as somebody who covers this stuff, I'm just like, let's get the fireworks going, yo. And remember when I got the opportunity to kind of ask him, like, do you see this draft similar to like the Sadiq Bey and Isaiah Stewart years, or when you were able to kind of pluck Isaiah Livers, or even during that 13? He was just like, yeah. And I was just like, oh my gosh, Troy Weaver is about to go ham, man. Like I'm not gonna be surprised. Is there a deal though? If he decides to trade back or trade up, which one do you think is more likely just from your perspective? Like, I know he says he's going to vet everything out, but with that home run pick, man, I just keep thinking, is Asar Thompson that home run pick where he stays at 5, but then uses other assets and 31 to move up? Or is it more likely that he uses 5 to trade with a team like Utah and get a couple more shots in the lottery?
That's a good question. We know Yahoo Sports reported that Utah has been in communication with Detroit about trading up into the lottery for the number 5 pick, possibly giving up number 9 and number 16. So you still got a chance to get a lottery player at number 9 and another quality player at 16. So, man, I think he can stand pat at number 5 and use 31 to kind of move up, which that would probably be the most likely scenario. But if he flips to number 5 to move back and get just 2 solid players right there in the middle of the first round, I wouldn't count that out either.
Yeah, yeah, definitely not counting out anything. But as I continue to ponder it, I kind of like your assessment. I kind of lean that way as well too. Like where I kind of want him to stand pat at 5, just pick that best player, unless there's a way to kind of move back maybe a couple spots. If the Utah deal is, listen, our guy's gonna be there at 9, you kind of have to, you got to kind of make that trade because then he can still move back up. But if Utah is seeing that they can make a deal with Portland, because it's, I don't know, bro. With Charlotte coming out and saying that they're going to pick, I forget who the report was by, so
Yeah.
I apologize for that. Do you remember who made the report that they're going to pick Brandon Miller?
Yeah, it was Adrian Wojnarowski,
Okay,
ESPN.
thank you for that, man. Thank you. Shout out Woj. Yeah, that's right, It was him because people were like, "Bro, you lied. You said you wasn't going to ruin any of these draft picks anymore." But shout out to him with him kind of just announcing that. Troy told us yesterday, bro, that this draft gets dicey after pick 1, and it really does. Does Portland really pick Scoot Henderson? It doesn't even feel like it's to pick. Like I know that they're talking about that they want to trade, and there's going to be a lot of this smoke and mirrors, but they're only going to trade for the right thing. I'm like, y'all aren't really picking Scoot Henderson. Yeah, that just doesn't. I feel like Utah might jump up. So yeah, I don't know, man. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the only way I see Portland picking Scoot, and I'm hearing that he had a really good workout with Portland, is if they finally make a decision on what they're going to do with Dame. Are they going to trade him away to the likes of Miami or to the likes of Brooklyn? That remains to be seen. But I think they need to have that conversation with Dame. They may try to trade on draft night to get another veteran player to pair with Dame. But who do you think would want to come to Portland?
Yeah,
That's been the thing all of Dame's career. Like no one wants to go over there and play with him. So
yep.
I think it depends on what they're gonna do with their franchise superstar.
And I think that that's going to wind up affecting Jeremy Grant as well because it, I don't care what anybody says. When you see the way that Troy Weaver was able to go in and take Jeremy Grant literally from a championship contending team that was offering the same amount of money, Portland, even though they can offer more money than Detroit, they got to be sitting here like they got to make something happen. That's why I believe that they're going to lean towards trading that number 2, even if you just take Scoot. If you, whether you keep Dame or whether you're losing them, I don't know if Scoot's enough. They gotta. It's almost like they're backed into a corner, and I think everybody in the NBA knows it. They got to trade that pick because they need assets badly, one way or the other, to help Dame. Like they're man, and that's where the draft to me gets crazy, bro.
Yeah.
Absolutely crazy. Like, is Utah really trying to trade up to take a Thompson twin?
Yeah.
Are they gonna trade up to take Scoot? And then you got the Thompson twins sitting there along with Houston favorite though, Jarris Walker.
Mhm.
I don't know, man. Am I crazy for thinking that the Pistons might have their pick between the Thompson twins, depending on what Portland does with that pick?
It's very much possible. But another team I'm not ruling out and I'm paying a lot of attention to is New Orleans Pelicans. I'm keeping my eye on the Zion situation. There are
Oh,
reports that him and the organization aren't seeing eye to eye. There's the off the court stuff that's constantly going on.
yeah.
So I'm paying attention to that team as well. Will they sneak up into the top 3 and try to trade Zion? Um, we don't know, but I don't see him coming to Detroit. I'll say that.
Nah, I was gonna ask you about that too. I'm kind of glad you brought that up. My feeling was everything that Troy was saying about the types of guys they want, either through trade
Serious
or
basketball
acquisition or
player.
or draft. What'd you say, brother?
Yeah, he said he wants serious basketball players
Serious.
that are.
That's a new one, brother. That's
Yeah,
a new one because it was what we've always heard. We want them to be good on and off the court and in the community. Now he's added serious basketball players. I was like, okay, all right, we're gonna add that one to the list of isms that we know Troy is looking for when we're talking. You said it. A lot of different breadcrumbs dropped. I think allows us to know they're not getting involved in that Zion deal. There's things that we never hear about, and then it just happens like Jeremy Grant, Bojan Bogdanovic, what? Marvin Bagley deal. Like we'd heard some flirtings with that one. But for the large part, we only hear really what Troy wants to hear. And he lets us know when he's not going to be involved with something. And yeah, I think that changes things. Someone asked if Brandon Miller so happened, like if Charlotte was just bluffing, he saw up in the fall, would Brandon Miller be somebody that Troy would pick? And I think he sits in a little bit different situation than some of the other players that you would deem as troublemakers or whatnot. I don't think that Brandon Miller is a character guy who doesn't fit Troy's MO, at least it's from what I've seen, what I've heard, and the type of pedigree that he's shown himself to have. But what really brings up the best question is if you decide to stay pat, and both of us kind of are like, you know what, it might behoove the Pistons to stay at 5, especially if they can get back into this first round with some other or lesser assets. Do you have like a big board, your top 3, your top 5 that you're looking at in the Pistons big board?
Yeah. And it's funny. I'm making my final mock draft today, so you'll get a preview of who I'm selecting. But it's no surprise. I'm going with who I selected my first mock draft. That was Houston's Jarris Walker. I think defensively, I think he's a Troy Weaver guy. Character wise, put away your pom poms. But no.
All right, who's number 2? You said
no. Number 2, Taylor Hendricks. If those 3 characteristics that you wanted in a coach was defense, development, and what was that? Discipline.
Yeah.
I think those 2 are prime candidates that kind of fits that pedigree. Taylor Hendricks, 7'2" wingspan, like he was blocking everything when he was at UCF. He's really good around the rim. So those 2 guys, and then if I had to throw a third one in there, I would say Asar Thompson, simply because he's more of a wing than a playmaker, but he can put the ball on the floor if he needs to. I think he just fits the Pistons more than Amen Thompson, his brother Amen. So, yeah, those 3 guys would be my mini big board for the Pistons.
Well, look, man, that was honestly my 3. I don't know if there's an order, but they're the 3. I feel like Asar fits that home run type potential pick. But if you're looking for somebody that can come in and give you that 2-way potential that Jeremy Grant gave you, you pick the guys that have kind of been my favorites. Well, let me take that back. Jarris Walker has been my favorite. Taylor Hendricks is somebody that Jeff, he kind of was telling me, bro, you gotta familiarize yourself with Taylor Hendricks. I know that he's mocked a little low, and it was at the time like in the 10, 11, 12 range. But he was like, listen, he's going to be a guy that might rise up the draft boards because when you look at the 2-way players, there's not a lot of those guys out there with that kind of Scotty Barnes kind of appeal. And I feel like Jarris Walker and Taylor Hendricks kind of fit that mold, that Jeremy Grant mold, that can play both ways. And if they can find themselves as complementary pieces to Cade and Ivy, as well as being able to be pesky defenders, man, that's what makes me excited about potentially staying put at number 5. Jarris Walker has been somebody that I've just been like, yo, that's tantalizing. Because to me, he's more of that 3-4 fit rather than that 4-5. He's shown to have a little bit more handle. And I believe that he's a player that honestly you could play alongside a crazy lineup of, if you wanted to, Stewart, Duren, and Jarris Walker. And I think that that's your absolute nightmare death defensive lineup out there. Just put them out there and just say, listen, I don't even care what y'all score. I want all your buckets to be transition buckets. That means I need y'all to wreak havoc on defense, man. Put out Killian Hayes, and if Ivy is taking any step or leap forward, man, on the defensive side, or even Cade, man, because I think Cade a lot of times gets forgotten, not disrespected, but forgotten in terms of his defensive impact. He's 6'6", 6'7". He has a pretty decent wingspan and length. He's not necessarily what people would say the fastest player, but I think he's a quick player. He's like intuitively quick, man. He knows how to kind of get after it, get in the passing lanes. He's had some big dunks off of things like that. And so I feel like this team, if they took a guy like Jarris Walker or even a guy like Taylor Hendricks, they could put out some pretty unique defensive lineups, especially if Bojan, hey, you know what you're going to get. Go to Bojan straight out the game, man. Fresh out the gates. get him like 5 looks right away. Get him
Yeah.
a couple threes, give him a couple ISOs, and depending on how the defense is going, then hey, let's definitely try and get somebody else in there who could potentially fill at least the shooter role as well as the potential of, a defensive stopper. And so it excites me. If it's a pick of Jarris or Taylor Hendricks, what is it ultimately that excites you about those guys and their two-way ability?
I think just because like the fact that they're defensive minded players, and I think Jairus he went into his team workouts wanting to show a little bit more on the offensive end because everyone knows he's a defensive player. I think that's the most interesting part about it. I know Detroit, they need to improve on both sides of the ball. They were in the latter 20s in offensive rating and defensive rating. I think they were 28th. But they need to take
Whew.
big strides in both of those areas next season.
Yes, they do.
And the first thing you got to do is you got to be able to defend. So I think you get a guy like Jarris Walker who can help out on that wing, like you said, next to Duren, next to Isaiah Stewart. They can be interchangeably. We know you're only going to get so much from Bogey defensively, so you got to rely more on his offense. Like you said, he come out the gate first quarter. He was also a third quarter guy, so those first and third quarters, just let him heat up.
Arcade is generally a slower scoring pace in those beginning of the first and sometimes that third.
Absolutely. So you let them kind of complement each other. But one player that I'm really intrigued or paying attention to is Cam Whitmore. And a lot of guys have said that because of his poor workouts, he's slipping in most draft boards, maybe even all the way down to 9. So if that's the Pistons plan all along and they trade down to get that 9th pick because they know he's going to be available, that'll be interesting as well. So you got to keep an eye on that.
That's interesting. I'm glad you brought up Cam Whitmore. He's a person who initially he was very, very high on my draft board. I thought him first, and then I became aware of Jarris Walker.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. The offensive ability is there. Defensively is where I have a little bit of concern, where I think it might slip a little bit at the NBA level.
Mm-hmm.
But everything he's shown, the tools are there. I don't know what went on in some of these workouts that has made teams cool off, or if it's just a smoke screen. We don't know. We've seen this before, man. We've seen this before. So I don't know. This is an interesting one, but Cam Whitmore would be definitely, if you could buy low, a very, very, very good high potential pick. If he's there at 9, we never thought about that. We're sitting here saying if you can get Taylor Hendricks or Jarris Walker at 9, if you can get Cam Whitmore, and honestly, is he the best scorer out of that bunch? That like the best kind of proven scorer out of that bunch of players?
Yeah, I would say so. He can go get his own. He can attack the basket. He can finish at the rim. He's a lob threat. He can get his own. He can manufacture his own perimeter shot. He definitely has to get better at that, but he's able to do it. At least at the college level. And that's another thing. I'm wondering how are a lot of these guys' games going to translate from college or overtime elite to the NBA level? We already know what Victor's going to do. Like San Antonio, they're getting a good one in the 7'5" phenom from France.
That's the hardest part. The Thompson twins, they look good. I was able to talk to some people, some sources, man, who kind of have a personal connection link, and they said that they're as advertised. That I'm hearing, as it relates to fit, Asar definitely kind of fits that number one tool that Troy Weaver spoke about at the exit interviews that they don't have. He definitely fits that. But from what I'm hearing, like Amin Thompson is just, he wants to be great. Like not just a good NBA player, but his work ethic and everything is just like just a tick on the side of like crazy, almost like how Kobe was like, yeah, I'm going to be great. And that to me, it's like if they're sitting there on the board, do you take the fit or do you take the best player available? That's going to be an interesting one there, because Amin Thompson, for as much as Cam Whitmore has fallen, Amin Thompson has kind of risen up the boards a little bit to the point that some people think he could be a pick at number 3 or in play at Houston at number 4. Definitely, there's a lot
Yeah.
of people who are like, "There's no way he's getting to the Pistons," which is going to be an interesting thing, brother. It's going to be real interesting. But if the Pistons were able to get Asar Thompson, well, just based on your assessment, what is it that you like best about Asar Thompson being a Detroit Piston?
His length. I think when you take a look at a guy like they already have Isaiah Livers, who's probably one of their best perimeter defenders. But when you take a look at Asar Thompson's length and how he's able to guard 1 through 3, maybe even 4, I think that's very intriguing. And he doesn't have to have the ball in his hands. Like you got Cade, you got Jaden Ivey, um, and you still have Alec Burks, which they're still deliberating on his team option. But I'm pretty sure they'll get that done pretty soon. But you got guys who can handle the ball, so he doesn't necessarily need it, but you do need a defender, a perimeter defender at that, because there were nights last season, man, when you just saw guys get into a rhythm and just light Detroit up. I remember
Oh,
Kyrie and Katie both played in Detroit and they both went off. And you just knew it was only a matter of time. Jason Tatum had his nights. You want a guy out there who's going to be able to go and guard the best perimeter defense, best offensive perimeter player on the other team. And I think Asar kind of fits that mold.
man, you are preaching right now. That was one of the things that Rod talked about extensively and exclusively. I remember when Jeremy Grant was traded, a lot of the narrative around that was, all right, just get him out, get him out, get him out. We need to get somebody who's not going to stop the ball, someone who can shoot, and whatever we can, we got good defenders on this squad, and blah 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 blah. And the
Mhm.
first thing we did when we sat here, Rod was like, all right, so who's guarding the 6'9" guys out there in the league? Who's guarding Giannis? Who's guarding KD? Who's guarding your Tatums? Who all the guys you named, and we all sat here like, he was like Isaiah Livers. Like, look, we love him, but I mean, come on, he's not Jeremy Grant, and Jeremy Grant's measurables are elite. That's something that I think a lot of people miss. His measurables are elite, and that's the thing, man, that makes me very, very interested when you said, the length and the players that you have at your top three. It's about that defensive ability. You're right. We cannot overblow or oversell that. I don't even know when we look at the landscape of players they could bring in here as it relates to trade or even in the free agency market. Jeremy Grant to me defensively is the coup de grace if you can get him. But other than that, I almost feel like their next best option is via the draft. I
Yeah.
don't, you know what I mean? To be able to go out there and get somebody who you're saying coming in, this is your role. This is what you will do. And some of these other people are going to be established, and I don't see teams just letting their defensive marquee, players go. They're not saying, yeah, let me just trade this guy. I haven't really seen that a lot. I've seen even teams sit on like guys like Drew Holiday for years, man. Like for years, Marcus Smart for years. Those guys just kind of stick with their squads. And so for the Pistons to be able to have opportunity to pick one or maybe even two of those guys, you got to go with it. And with Asar Thompson, you're right, man. That ability to even play the 1 through the 5 in a pinch, just depending on the situation, the setting, the matchup, to be able to know you can kind of play in that pick and roll. We think
Mhm.
about how excited people get about Isaiah Stewart being able to switch out onto the perimeter, bro. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? Like people get excited about that. Like, oh my goodness. Think about if you actually had a 3 that could switch onto a 5 and hold his own. And then
Yeah.
also defend the 1 on the same play, potentially, or the 2. That to me is that versatility that Troy was talking about when he said he would take 5 creatives on the floor. Knowing that these guys don't think just one way, I think that defensively, you want those kind of versatile, creative players who can use their IQ, use their athleticism, use their length, to really make something happen, and not just putting tall players out there like the Charlie V or the Greg Monroe, Josh Smith, Andre Jones. It's like you're looking to put skilled players out there, and he talked about that around the time they made the James Wiseman trade. And so Asar Thompson is somebody that I've been kind of going back and forth on who's the best fit between those twins and who's the best player, as well as the other guys on the board at 5. This is going to be interesting because I personally have the same top 3 as you.
Okay.
It's after that top 3 where I'm like, all right, let's see kind of who's available for
Mhm.
me personally. But what I'm really getting kind of juicy with and into the meat of is who may be available down in that first round. I'm going to talk about it a little bit later with Steve, but is there a guy at 31 or anyone kind of down and out or a group crop of guys? I don't want to give away any secrets or anything that may be in the articles, but are there a crop of guys or group of guys maybe later in that first round that you think might be worth a look at if Troy wanted to trade back into the first?
Yeah. I'm looking at a couple of my notes right now, and a couple of guys I had in mind. Trace Jackson Davis, Indiana,
Mm,
6'8". Some people classify him as a big, and I know the Pistons have four bigs already, but I kind of see him as another guy who can just get on the wing, play the three, maybe play the four, and just play defense and be a lob threat. I think he would be a really good pick there in the late first round, early second. I'm sorry. You
yeah.
got Ben Shepherd from Belmont. Um, averaged 18 points, 41% from three last season at Belmont. 6'5", 2-way guard. So I think they'll need another guard at some point. I know they have a ton of them already in Cade, Ivy, Killian. They don't know what they're going to do yet with Corey Joseph. He's going to be an unrestricted free agent. But if, say, Kojo doesn't come back, you take another guard to kind of have as insurance. They also got RJ Hampton. So I think it just depends. It depends on what they're looking for. Do they want another forward or they want another guard? Because I think they got a plethora of bigs right now.
Yeah, definitely a plethora of bigs, and they're gonna have to resolve that one way or the other. I'm hoping that they use their assets, these bigs in an asset aspect of a trade. Troy says he's not gonna necessarily shy away from that. Are there any players on this roster, man, that you think like? Do you have like your most tradable assets list? I personally believe that Marvin Bagley, he's definitely somebody that's going to be expendable. I think that they actually like what they have in James Wiseman. I wouldn't be surprised if the right deal comes along, but I don't think that they're looking to necessarily trade him. But with a guy like Marvin Bagley, or even a guy like, Bojan Bogdanovic, I don't believe they're looking to trade him, but
Mhm.
knowing that he's a player, the type of player that contending teams and not necessarily rebuilding teams, but teams looking to take that next step, maybe from sixth seed to now we want to kind of get into the fifth, fourth, third seed. They could be looking at a guy like Bojan Bogdanovic rather than whoever they're drafting, somewhere in the lottery or a little bit lower down. So are there any guys that you think, along with those players that you think find themselves a little bit expendable on draft night?
Yeah, I think Bogdanovich and Bagley are definitely two that come to mind. I'm trying to think going down the roster. I don't want to put this name out there, but if I'm gonna put a third name, I'll say Isaiah Stewart. We know there were reports that Boston
Yeah.
was interested. I personally wouldn't trade Stu if I was Detroit. I think he's the heart and soul of this team. He brings too much value on the defensive end, and we know he tried to venture out to the perimeter last season. Unfortunately, he had that shoulder injury that kind of allowed him to kind of go through a tough stretch there in January, February, I want to say. But I think he's very valuable to this team, and maybe not even in the starting role. He could be a valuable six man, if you will. Um, just a guy who can come in and kind of change the flow of the defense.
Yeah, I actually lean towards what you're saying there. You know, to start the season, I didn't want to set Pistons Twitter ablaze or anything of that nature, or try to seem as if or feel as if I'm hating on Isaiah Stewart. But I felt like, just based on the basketball of it all, his best fit on this squad might be the six-man role, coming off the bench, still has a heart and soul, still has a voice, still has somebody that people in this league aren't going to mess with. People in his squad, especially these new guys coming in, he could be that voice. And I think that the Pistons, they need that. When we talk about the intrinsic value of somebody like Cade Cunningham being a connector, I feel like just as importantly, you need guys like Isaiah Stewart. When you take him off the roster, I don't even know who else they can go and draft or pick up who's kind of cut from that same cloth, that
Right.
same mentality, has that same kind of dog in them, as people want to say. I just don't see where they go to replace that. And you can't, unless it's a money thing, I think you find a way to make it work with him, even if it's off the bench. We talked about this as well on the podcast last summer, as it relates to can Troy find a way to have that fourth good player come off the bench? Something that they were they couldn't make necessarily happen or make work with OKC. I think that these guys, from how they were drafted, that whole family atmosphere, kind of being around them, this kind of brotherhood, I feel like Isaiah Stewart is somebody primed to actually accept a role like that. But if not, then from the actual news of it all, from reporting of it all, from the business of it all, he does find himself, in my opinion, as well as a candidate as potentially expendable. Like we said, Troy generally gets players when he's able to pick them that he likes, that you could say he loves, that he has some personal connection with. I know that he scouted Isaiah Stewart when he was even on high school AAU circuit and such. But he's always going to make sure that these players can either serve their best on the roster or can serve the team best in a trade, similar to Jeremy Grant. We know why he brought Jeremy Grant here. He paid him and he believed in him. And when it served the team best, he made sure that he wasn't going to sell cheap. And so it's like, all right, if it is something where Isaiah Stewart finds himself on the block, then I believe that it's going to be something really, really, really big in return for the Pistons, similar to the Jeremy Grant thing. But any last words, any other pointers, man, before this draft gets underway tomorrow?
Get your popcorn ready.
What'd you say?
Get your popcorn ready.
Hey, get the popcorn ready, man. Get your Kool-Aid ready.
But
I think it's going to be a good one.
I did want to mention this. I think tomorrow's draft is very important, but I also think free agency is going to be equally as important in order to kind of get this team to the next step and try to win more games in 17 than they did last season, especially when you bring in a coach like Monty Williams, who's taken the Phoenix Suns from a 19-win team to the NBA Finals in a matter of 3 years. So I think now is the time. If Detroit's gonna take this leap like they've been wanting to, they have to make some moves.
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad that you stated that. The expectation has to be moving towards not just getting better. We can see marginal improvement. Even Troy's like, look, I know we don't have all the wins, but I like our lot in life right now. And he talked about it. We want to get our guys on the court. This is something we haven't seen. We haven't seen Ivy, Cade, Duren, Stewart, and Bogdanovich on the court. We haven't. We want to see those guys get out there and be able to play and see what we actually have. And I remember he said, then we will kind of have a better idea of how we need to augment. Now, that doesn't mean he's going to rest on his laurels until he sees them. If there's a deal standing there slapping him in the face, that's going to make the Pistons better today, he's going to take it even before we see what that squad could be. But you're right. I'm glad that the onus is on him to say we have to start winning now. And if they believe that they have right now a pretty good nucleus that could win, they just got to get out there on the court. At the very least, you want Troy confident in what he's doing. I don't want him out there. When Joe picked Darko, there was word that he got intel from other people, man. And that's where I'm like with Troy Weaver. He's been a GM that's shown I'm kind of confident in my intel. What was the theme? I think the theme yesterday, bro, of that press conference was how prepared they were. Just kind of how sure they were. Hey, did anything change? No, we're still doing analysis. We vetted everything out in every opportunity, in every situation, but we kind of know who we like. We kind of know what we're going to do based on where things go. We're prepared for everything. He said it's going to be dicey after pick one. So, look, I think Troy Weaver's a guy, but this draft is going to be the one that kind of either puts a cherry on top or is ice cream that drops on the sidewalk. It is. That's what it's going to be, brother. But look, I appreciate you, Mike, for dropping by. Look, I'm going to give this drum roll for Rob Beers, as always. But for the Woodward Pistons podcast and the platform for Woodward Sports, I appreciate you guys dropping by. My name is Brandon Dent, a.k.a. Detroit Kool-Aid. Thank you to Mr. Mike Curtis for dropping by the Detroit News. Their Detroit Pistons beat writer. Shout out to Jeff Iafredi, too. He should be moseying back here soon. But let's get this drum roll going and we call it a show, brother.
Let's do it.
Hey, yo! Shout out to Detroit News Rod Beard, who decided to go on a vacation at like one of the busiest times of the year for, whatever. I love you, bro. Till next time, you all